is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Burnout Brighter. I'm joined by my lovely, wonderful co host, Darren. And
Hello.
on this episode of the show, we are going to be talking all about Psychonauts 2. We were given a fantastic opportunity from Xbox Canada to review the game. So thank you so much for that. We appreciate it a lot. And we're going to dive into our thoughts about the game. Darren is a massive Psychonauts fan. Myself, I am new to the series with the second one, so we'll have a bit of like newbie and vet conversation. We will not be going into any spoilers, so don't worry about that. We'll just be talking about what we thought about the game and kind of where we're at. But Darren, before we get any further, I kind of want to establish where we're at with the game. How far did you get in Psychonauts 2?
I got the platinum trophy. And yeah, for the record, I played on the PS4. I played the PS4 version of the game, and
Mm-hmm.
I was playing on a base PS4. And
Okay.
yeah, I
As
literally did everything I could.
Okay, as for myself, I was playing it on Xbox Game Pass because I started a little bit later after it came out, and I've put in about 4-ish hours, 3 to 4 hours. Darren, I would say that's probably fair.
Yeah, that's
And
that's
I'm
fair.
playing on Xbox Game Pass on PC, so I still have a little ways to go. But this will be my thoughts so far. And Darren, as already got into the platinum, will give us a little bit more in depth. But Darren, before we get a little bit more into the weeds of Psychonauts 2. I know that this franchise, and especially the first game, means a lot to you. So, can you tell me a little bit about what makes Psychonauts as a franchise so special?
Yeah, thanks for starting off that way too, because it gives me an opportunity to say that I was originally trying to write like a kind of formal review for this, but I felt like um, it wasn't, my words weren't coming out. Because I'm going to say straight up, like, my review of this game is very biased. I am biased. This is not an unbiased opinion from me. I don't think there is such a thing as an unbiased review, because I think we all have our own biases
Mhm.
and tastes. But, like, if you think there is such a thing as an unbiased review, this ain't it. I am a huge Psychonauts fan. I've been waiting for this game for 16 years. And Psychonauts, the original, meant a lot to me. Uh, because of, I think, the way the story is told. It's a story and a game unlike anything I've ever played. It came out in like the PS2 Xbox era, where it was kind of like the wild west of action platformers, where like anything goes. There was no format, so they were trying a bunch of different things, seeing what sticks. And it just is such a unique series, unique writing, unique art style. It really is a product of passion from a team that don't want to do what everyone else is doing.
Mhm. So, what about the first game made you so excited and made you wait 16 years? And I mean, granted, that wasn't a choice,
Yeah.
but what about the first game made you so stoked that the second one was announced and this long ride to get to the second one? And we don't have to go into spoilers about the original
Sure.
because I'm sure there's a lot of people hopping into the first one for the
Yeah.
first time now, given its
Mhm.
availability on a Game Pass. What about it? Why did that game stay with you for so long?
It really was the story and the writing and the characters and just the ingenuity of the gameplay. Like, I have never laughed so hard out loud to myself playing a game as I did the original Psychonauts. It is so goddamn funny. It's written by Eric Wolpaw. I hope I'm saying his name right. He's the same guy who wrote the two Portal games. So that just shows like the level of
Mhm.
comedy and like quality of writing. And the gameplay itself was just so weird. Every time you went, all the level was built around going into people's minds and exploring what made
Mhm.
them tick. And everybody's mind uh, is like a perception of how they see themselves. And it's just so imaginative. Like, one guy's mind is like a conspiracy theory suburb. One person's mind is a freaking like Catan board game. One person's mind is like, you go into the mind of like a fish and you're like a Godzilla creature attacking a city of fish. Like, it's just so different and absurd and hilarious and unique. And that's, I wanted to see in the second game, I wanted to see this uniqueness continue. I wanted to see this creativity continue. I wanted to see the same level of writing continue. And I I think it did. I think it did. Like, they hit it out of the park.
Okay, so let's not beat around the bush anymore. Let's dive into Psychonauts 2. So like
Mhm.
you said, you've platinumed it.
Yeah.
How rough hour count? How long did it take you to roughly to do that?
Yeah. So I take a little bit of time to play games to 100% it. It took me 24 hours, which is like double the length of the first game. And
Yeah, exactly. So it seems like they fleshed this one out. Not fleshed this one out, but they made it bigger. They made it more
yes.
expansive. They've added a lot more to collect, right?
Yeah, like this game has so much more stuff to do than the original game. And I was shocked at how like despite it being twice as long, playing through it, at least for me, it doesn't feel like it. Like I was
Mhm.
genuinely mad when the game ended. Like I like this game so much. I was mad that it was over because I wanted even more to do. And not in like a bad way
So
where I
yeah,
felt like there wasn't enough. Like it like I felt like it was enough, but I just wanted more.
I completely understand. I had that same feeling after finishing Persona, which is wild because that game is like 100 and something hours. But
Yeah,
it sounds like it's one of those games that like even when it's over, it kind of leaves this like emptiness, this kind of feeling of like I kind of wish it didn't, right?
exactly.
So so without spoiling anything, tell me how does this one stack up to the original? What makes Psychonauts 2 so awesome? Tell me a little bit about the story. Like
Yeah.
how does the story stand up?
Yeah. So yeah, because I want to be like clear. Like I am freaking in love with this
Mhm.
game. Like I this is like one of my highest recommendations of a game of all time. And people who listen to our podcast know that I'm very negative and a harsh critic on a lot of things. So I love
Mhm.
it. This story holds up completely. I think it was a perfect like it picks up almost immediately after the first game with only a small gap if that is explained if you played the VR exclusive Psychonauts Rhombus of Ruin, like side mission.
Mhm.
Uh, so despite it being 16 years later in real time, it's like a day later in game time. And they did not miss a beat. Like it feels in the best way possible like this is a game that could have been made 15 years ago. Like they did not lose their edge, they did not lose their sense of humor, they did not lose their sense of character. In fact, I think they've just gotten better because I think the story they tell, and in the first game, you meet a lot of characters that are dealing with their own issues, because obviously this is a game that deals with mental health, but they
Mhm.
are more characters that are kind of broken. Their psyches are broken, and they're very, very damaged. But in this game, I think it was a good choice to focus more on characters that are going through smaller scale mental health issues, because I think it helped the
Mhm.
story resonate more from a personal perspective. And I think their focus on mental health in a more real way, like helped the game resonate because this is a game that actually deals with a lot of dark subject matter, but it deals with it with such humor and empathy. To me, it like showed me and made me happy. That it was nice that you could have a game that didn't feel so dark, but still felt like it had a lot of difficult topics and good things to say about those topics.
Yeah, and that's so two things that I agree with you from my time so far. One, I really appreciate the content warning going into this game. They're very upfront with saying that, like, yes, we're going to be dealing with stories and with subject matter that can be dark, that can be difficult, but the game was made with empathy in mind. So just be aware of that going into it. So you're already kind of prepared. And the
Mhm.
second thing, as a new player coming into it, I have never played Psychonauts. I've never played Rhombus of Ruin. I always get skittish about going into a franchise once it's already started because I'm
Right.
kind of like I'm not going to know the characters, I'm not going to know what's going on. The game does a great job of giving you like a cutscene at the beginning of the game that catches you up on everything that happens. And like, sure, granted, still like I said, about 4 hours in, there'll be characters that pop up, there'll be relationships that I don't understand, but as a whole, the game does a fantastic job of being like, this is the world. This is where you're going. This is where we're at now, and then letting you pick up from there without making you feel like, oh, I need to go back and play this first one now.
Yeah.
So as a newbie, if you don't want to go back to play Psychonauts, and again, a lot of people are talking about this being a game of the year to contender. A lot of people are talking about how special this is. If you don't have a way to play the first one, I think it's pretty safe to jump into the second one even without playing the VR version, which I'm sure a lot of people didn't, or the base game.
Yeah, very quickly, what did you think of the intro video? Do you think the intro video they give you did prepare you for the story?
I think prepared me enough. And like that's kind of a thing. Like there's already obviously established relationships. There's obviously like established things that are going on that I won't understand to the fullest extent.
Mhm.
That's just by virtue of them not spending an hour talking to me before the game starts. But in like
Yeah.
the 3 to 4 minutes that they did, I understand enough to enjoy the game without being taken out of it every few minutes, being like, wait, what just happened? What the hell's going on? What,
Yeah.
like, why?
Yeah.
So like
Because
I think it does a good job.
yeah, I think, and as someone who has played the games, I will say that despite there being a lot of characters from the first game in it, I think later in the story is trying to focus more on new characters, and the characters that were from the original actually take a little bit of a back seat. So obviously there are going to be character resolutions and there's going to be like revelations in the story and references that I don't think will hit as hard if you have not played that original. But for people that are
Mhm.
worried that they're not going to understand these characters, I'll at least say like the old characters don't actually play as much of a part in this game as the newer characters do.
Which I think was the right call, given how
Yeah.
like the giant gap between the two games. I think
Mhm.
was the right call. So yeah, so story so far, I'm enjoying it. I think the wackiness and zaniness of it, like I have to say, so like very light spoilers for the first thing that you do in the game. I hate the dentist, and the first level is filled with teeth. There is literally like a zipper door that just like as it zippers out, the teeth come up. Ugh, bleh, bleh. But like to the quality of the game, I kept being like, okay, I want to see what's around this corner. I want to know what's going to happen next. The cast
Yeah.
seems lovable so far. The story seems genuinely interesting. I'm very curious as to what's happening. And again, coming as a newbie, I have no kind of base to build off everything. So everything that the game throws at me, like I have nothing to go off of. Everything is brand new, right? And
And
which is as a sequel, it is for everyone. But you know what I mean. There's no
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
there's no setup for me to kind of be like, oh, I see this coming. It's fun. It's fun.
And I know humor is subjective, but did you like the humor? Because I know it's not normally your absurdist humor is not normally your cup of tea. And I feel that there is like a lot of absurdist elements to the humor of the game. So what did you think of that?
I think that the humor for me, I am enjoying the characters more so than
Than the
the
jokes.
general absurdity of it. I
Mhm.
did get just to a point in the game now that actually had me being like, I wasn't like busting a gut laughing, but it was kind of one of those things that's like, what am I looking at? Like
Yeah.
that kind of reaction. Like
Yeah.
like I am still laughing through it,
Mhm.
but yeah, I think as a whole, it's not entirely at my aisle of comedy, but I am
Sure.
enjoying it for what it is.
Sure. Fair. That's fair.
So so without so kind of very generally, story is awesome. You like
Mhm.
where they went with it.
Yeah.
What about the level design and kind of what was the original as open as this one is? Like
No.
how do you feel about the level design in the second one?
Yeah, so that's one thing I'm also very impressed by is they they made the levels so much larger than the first game, yet still made them feel compact enough that it wasn't overwhelming. If I could make a comparison to a game, maybe this is a weird comparison to make. I'm not sure how many people have played this, but the game Ukulele
Mhm.
came out. For people that were big Banjo Kazooie fans, Ukulele came out, which was also a 3D platformer. And a big complaint that they had with that game is the levels were just too large. Because I think in 3D platformer like collectathon games, if you make a level too big, it kind of sucks the fun out because it just takes too long to travel around. So I think with
Mhm.
Psychonauts 2's level design, rather than making the levels just like bigger open spaces, at least for the minds,
Mhm.
the brains that you go into, they made them bigger in the sense that there's more to do, but they made them more focused linear pathways, which, and the focus is on the platforming more than it was in the original, which I actually kind of liked because it made it so that collectibles were never too far away and you never had to do too much backtracking. And also they made the platforming tighter so it wasn't like it worked for me, so I enjoyed these bigger levels in the mines where you just still didn't have to go too far to do stuff. Like it felt
Mhm.
focused. There's bigger open zones in like the main hubs that are more expansive, but those are more relaxed because it's kind of like you collect stuff if you want to, if you don't have to do it if you don't want to. So I don't mind that being bigger and open, but like the things that you have to do, your main
Mhm.
objectives, the brains, those being focused, I think was a good idea. Before I let take it off to you, I'm sorry, I know I'm talking a lot, but
That's okay.
compared compared to the first game, if I'm going to nitpick, because I love to nitpick, I don't think any of the levels are as creative as something like the first game's Milkman Conspiracy, where it's like this weird adventure game, or a board game from the Waterloo World level, or the Fish Godzilla scenario, or even like the theater level from the first game. Those almost felt like they were different games. In this game, all the levels
Mhm.
feel the same, but still as imaginative from like a design and a visual and like a story perspective.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I will say that I find that the level design is quite cool, especially going like there's a point where like everything goes sideways and you're like almost running through like a doctor's X-ray screen. Like they do some
Yeah.
cool stuff. I do think that the platforming is a little bit looser than I think I'd like it to be. I feel like I'm missing a lot of jumps that I feel like I should be making, and I'm not even talking
Mhm.
about like long distance jumps because
Yeah.
there are some jumps that you're gonna try out and be like, okay, no, I can't do it. But
Yeah.
like there'll be points where I jump to try and grab like I think to swing off of, and he'll completely miss it.
Yeah.
Or like I feel like it should stick and it doesn't. So those interactions so far have not been a lot. There's been a couple. It's been a few times now where I've like dropped into an area and I'm kind of like, oh crap. Like I granted I
That's
die and I
fair.
kind of warp back up there quite quickly, but there's been a couple of times where I've been like, I should have done that. Like I thought he was going to grab that
Mhm.
and he didn't. So like there's been a couple of those points, but again, it hasn't kind of broken the experience for me, but I just do want people to know that sometimes some of the platforming is a little looser, and I think that's just a product of the way that the game is built. Like it
Yeah.
feels very much like a mascot platformer. Um so I feel like that is one thing that I want to bring up. It's just that sometimes I think the platforming is a little bit looser than it should be.
And I'll double that I also experienced those issues as well, actually sometimes. Like the wall jump sometimes doesn't work the way you want it to. And I've definitely also missed some
Mhm.
jumps. So that was a good thing to bring up.
Yeah. So I kind of think that the last major thing that we need to talk about in terms of the gameplay mechanics and stuff. Tell me what you thought about the combat and the abilities.
So the combat in the original game was basically shoot stuff with your side blast until it's dead, and that's all you do. You also had like pyrokinesis, which
Okay.
worked on some enemies, but combat was definitely an afterthought in the first game. It's not an afterthought in this game. It is definitely like the combat was focused on a lot more. And as someone who played the
Hmm.
first game and was expecting something like kind of not that great, like I'm not going to say the combat's amazing because the combat I don't think is the
Yeah.
focus of the game. There's definitely some issues with it.
Hmm.
Like some enemies feel cheap sometimes because they'll predict where you're going and they'll like old school game design shoot their projectiles in the direction that you're going to be. So you have to think about that and then run in the opposite direction to like bait them, but like it's stuff that you
Right.
don't really see in games a lot anymore. Um, and I think that for what it is, it works really well. And all of the abilities you get have combat purposes, which is not how it was in the first game. At least in this game, you have a skill tree, and the skill tree doesn't make a ton of changes, but I
Hmm.
think it works. Like for a 3D platformer, this level of combat focus was what I wanted. It met what my needs were, which was just like a competent, simple combat system with unique enemies that almost have like a Doom style system where it's like you have certain abilities that work on better on other enemies than some others. So you're
Hmm.
trying to figure out like what's the loadout I want for this combat scenario. And it does get pretty challenging actually. Like I was dying at some fights. Like it's not easy. So I was pretty
Hmm.
impressed by it, but I'm not gonna like say it's like the best thing ever. But it's definitely
Yeah.
better than the first game and good enough for my tastes.
Yeah, I would definitely already find myself sticking to a certain set of like my of the like telekinetic abilities and the psychic powers that Raz has. Because like yeah, I like using some of them more than I do others. The combat itself, I agree, is fine. It hasn't blown me away. I do kind of like the enemy design. I think there's a great variation, even like by taking some of the enemies that you come across and shrinking them or making them larger, just also changes the way that you approach some situations. I will say that the thing that bothers me is the dodge, just because
Yeah.
I think that's just a product of what I've been playing lately. I've gotten very used to dodging through the attacks, which does not work here,
No.
or at least it doesn't at this point. Where
No.
if you try and dodge through the attack, I've been playing a ton of Dreamscaper, which is something you can do.
Mhm.
I just I
You'll
think
get hit.
rewiring my yeah, rewind my brain. So like again, like it's something that like you have to kind of think about, like, okay, I can't do that. So how do I handle the situation? Which abilities do I need to use to kind of, overcome the situation? The couple of bosses that I faced so far, I thought also had some pretty cool design.
Mhm.
I think the combat works. It's
Yeah,
fun. I'm glad that they give you a lot of different, like at least so far, a bunch of different abilities, and you can kind of. I'm very also happy that swapping in between them is almost
fast.
instantaneous and very
Yeah.
very easy to do. Which again, it goes with the flow of everything. So I think the combat works.
And there is more customization
And
too.
yeah.
Like you've got pins and stuff that you can buy and equip that changes combat a little bit. It
Mhm.
doesn't make a ton of difference, but it makes it enough that it gives you something to do. I I will say in the first game I didn't actually ever want to fight anything. In this game, I never dreaded doing a combat scenario, which is different than the
Okay,
first game.
that makes sense. Well, that's awesome. Okay, so combat's good. Is there any big point, Darren, left in terms of the game mechanics and stuff that you want to touch on before we kind of go on to final thoughts?
No, yeah, I think yeah, just to reiterate, like
Mhm.
I'm trying to be reserved and I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible in this review. It's really hard to do that for me. Um I think it works. I think gameplay wise it just works. It's not as tight as it could be, but I don't
Mhm.
think it matters and there's nothing in the game that is so demanding that some looseness really changes the way that I feel about the game.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I mean for me as well. Like I even like I said, going into it with I'm not a huge 3D platformer. I generally enjoy platformers to be more 2D, but like I keep thinking about this game. I keep coming back to this game. It has a charm to it that I think because like going into it, the art style is something that kind of put me off. It kind of has almost that like I don't want to say Ren and Stimpy, but kind of in that world of kind of like it's a strange art style that
Yeah.
I just generally don't vibe with.
Yeah.
But I've kind of fallen in love more and more with the game and what it's doing, and I do think it's one of those ones that kind of gets better as you go. The finale or like the last section of the second, like the first full mission that you go on that isn't the opening mission
Mhm.
is fantastic.
Mhm.
Like they do this game does a lot of really really cool things, and it really kind of captures your heart in a way that kind of sneaks up on you, in my opinion. Like this wasn't a game that like from the jump for me I was like, oh my god, I love this game. But the
Mhm.
more time that I spend time with, like the more time that I spend with it, it's kind of like, oh, this actually might be something special. So I'm really excited to see where this game is going to take me. But Darren, hit me with your closing thoughts. Do
Okay.
you recommend Psychonauts 2? What do you think of the game?
This is where I gush for 1 minute. Give
Go.
me 60 seconds to gush.
Go.
This game it is literally everything I wanted it to be. It exceeded all my expectations. If you loved the first game, you need to play this. If you never played the first game, I still think you need to play this game. If you think you care about 3D platformers at all, I think you need to play this game because I think this game shows that the 3D platformer or collectathon genre can still exist in AAA games. This is a game that reminds me of what games used to be like when I played games on the GameCube, and it literally is a model for what I want games to aspire to be from an artistic perspective, from a writing perspective, and just from a freaking overall packaged perspective. I love this game more than all, any other game that I've played in the last like 5 years. And it's, I already know it's going to be my game of the year. I already know.
Well, then there you go, everybody. Thank you so much for watching our Psychonauts 2 review. Thank you once again to Xbox Canada for providing us with a code for review. If you liked what you saw, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video along with checking out our other stuff below. Darren, thank you for loving Psychonauts 2, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace out.
Bye.